So we're in world history, and we're going on to section 15:3, which talks about good Queen Bess. On November 17th, 1558, the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, at the age of 25, became the Queen of England. Here's a picture. I like this picture here. This is her mother, Anne Boleyn, and her as a baby saying, "My Elizabeth shall be queen, and my blood will have been well spent." As we know, Anne Boleyn was beheaded because she didn't have a son for Henry VIII. Elizabeth had a dangerous childhood. She had learned from the hard times when to keep silent and when to abide her time and to be cunning. She knew how to get the best out of men for their country. She had a gift to pick the right able men, and a capacity for inspiring devotion. With her people, she never went wrong. She never did get married, but she lived for her country. Her people responded with complete loyalty, and they almost worshipped her. She was considered good Queen Bess, daughter of Henry VIII. Can you believe that? The Elizabethan settlement. Elizabeth faced many problems, but they had roots in the religious conflicts of her country. There were already problems, as we know. She put forth a settlement or a series of laws which laid the foundation of the Anglican Church, or the Church of England. But English Catholics were opposed to this, of course, and the Puritans wanted to purify the Church of England. They said the English Church was too like the Roman Catholic Church. And the separatists wanted to be separate from them and totally be away from the Anglican Church. The majority, though, were satisfied with the settlement for the time being, which meant when the settlement happened, yes, they were satisfied because they knew things were a lot better than they had been under Bloody Mary, right? Elizabeth's main concern was the Roman Catholics who had been backing Philip of Spain. Suddenly, Bloody Mary died, and so Philip, he wanted to marry Elizabeth and make her Catholic. Elizabeth could not stand Philip in the least bit. And she did not want England to become Spanish, and did not want anything to do with the persecution and the Inquisition that he put forth. They were enemies. Queen Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots. Okay, so this is kind of important because a lot of people, they get upset with what Elizabeth, in executing Mary, Queen of Scots, her cousin. Philip of Spain wanted to marry Elizabeth and make England Roman Catholic. When she refused, he wanted to overthrow her now and make her cousin, who was named Mary Stuart. Remember the Stuart and the Tudors were constantly fighting? And she was the Catholic Queen of Scotland. So he wanted to marry the Catholic Queen of Scotland then, and make Scotland Catholic, and declare Catholicism, Roman Catholicism for England also. So, Mary Stuart. Who was Mary Stuart? In 1542, she was only 1 week old when she became queen after her father's death. It had been agreed she would marry the son of King Henry VIII, Edward, and unite Scotland and England in the Reformation. So her mother, they wanted this baby here that she had, her mother's name was Mary of Guise, and she was French. And she wanted to keep Scotland Roman Catholic and controlled by France, who at that time was controlled by the popes and the Holy Roman Empire, And so her mother was grooming her to be queen. She sent Mary, her child, to be brought up in France and to marry Francis, the king's son and heir. Mary, but she basically wanted us going back to Scotland and becoming Queen of Scotland. So, marrying a French. So she's a French coming into the area of Scotland, which Scotland was very much reformed. In fact, in Scotland, many had become born-again Christians. The Scottish Reformation had already started under John Knox. And it says John Knox, July 31st. Well, the Scottish Reformation opened with the first execution of preachers. So as the Reformation happened, the queen, that was controlled, the baby queen was basically controlled in Scotland. And John Knox, 1505, 1572, was the outstanding leader, but many of the leaders then were put to death. So Knox was captured and forced to serve as a slave on a French ship for 19 months because they did not want him to come and to be spreading the Reformation in Scotland and England. Edward VI, then when Edward became king, that young 9-year-old king, secured his release and brought him to England. And that's where he preached. Knox preached reform in England. When Edward died, then Bloody Mary came in and became queen. So Knox was forced to leave England. Otherwise, he would have been killed. So he traveled to a refuge of Geneva, Switzerland. And Calvin made him a minister of the English Protestants there that were in exile. And so basically there he was preaching again in Switzerland under John Calvin. Mary Stuart versus John Knox. So in 1559, Scotland called Knox home to lead them. Scotland said, well, John Knox was from Scotland. Mary Stuart at that time, remember she married Francis II, King of France. And Mary of Guise, who ruled Scotland as a regent for her daughter, planned to depose Queen Elizabeth and make her daughter queen instead. So there was a spy plan all the way that we're going to get rid of Queen Elizabeth now. And my daughter, Mary Stuart's going to be queen not only of France, was married to the French king, but now Queen of Scotland and Queen of England. Knox and his followers appealed to Queen Elizabeth and the Scottish Protestants, and Elizabeth got very upset with what was going on with her cousin Mary Stuart, married to the French king, and what was going on in Scotland, which was neighbored there to England. And so Elizabeth sent 10,000 troops to Scotland. Mary of Guise then died, and then the French gave up and said, we don't want to be in war here. And so the Scottish Protestants were left in control in Scotland. And they set up their own parliament under the Scottish Presbyterian Church. So when you think of John Knox, you think of the Presbyterian Church at that time under Calvin's doctrines, because basically John Knox was discipled by John Calvin in many ways. Then Mary, the Queen of Scots, returns. Remember, she was married to French king. Now she's going to go. Her husband, the French king dies, and now in 1561, Mary returns to Scotland after her husband's death. This is the second Mary. We have Bloody Mary and Mary, Queen of Scots, who now she's wanting to change all of England and Scotland back to Roman Catholic. She is now a Catholic queen of a Protestant nation. Not a good thing. She and John Knox were now bitter enemies, and Knox successfully opposed her marriage to Don Carlos, the son of Philip II of Spain. Here we go again. So they wanted her to marry Philip, the monster Philip and Bloody Mary, wanted her to marry Philip's son, Don Carlos, and so she would be regent, or she'd be controller of not only Scotland, but also of a French background and also of Spain. And of course, Scotland and England, they did not want her to marry Philip's son and be Spanish of all things, and not only bringing in Spanish, but bringing into Catholicism into a Protestant nation. Mary said, here's what she said, her words. Now, I feel pretty sorry for Mary because in a lot of ways, she was just groomed to be a queen the way they wanted to. She was a pawn, is what she was. And she said, I fear John Knox's prayers more than an army of 10,000 men. Because she saw whatever John Knox did, and when he prayed, things would happen. She saw the fruit of John Knox. Mary, Queen of Scots, makes worse of things. So here we have Elizabeth. This is supposed to be Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots. I don't think they were quite that beautiful, but that's some actresses there. But many misguided conspiracies that failed. Mary, Queen of Scots, had many conspiracies. People tried to use her, this Queen of Scotland, and bring in conspiracies so that they could overcome England. The Scots were fed up, so they imprisoned her and abdicated the throne in 1567 in favor of her infant son, James VI. So Scotland says, we cannot have our queen. They imprisoned her. So like I said, she was kind of a pawn in many senses. And James, her son's supporters, kept him on the throne as a baby as they were trying to keep Scotland from going into Spanish control under Philip II. And so Mary escaped and she fled to England because Scotland, she felt she possibly could be killed in Scotland now. And she hoped her cousin, Queen Elizabeth, good Queen Bess, would have mercy on her instead. But Queen Elizabeth feared her to be a threat, thinking they're bringing her in here so that she can, in that sense, they could try to kill Elizabeth so that she would be queen. Yes, indeed, they were planning that. Queen Elizabeth feared to be a threat to England's independence, so she was imprisoned in England. So as imprisoned, she was imprisoned, but good Queen Bess treated her kindly in prison. But England was preparing for war now. In 1586, Queen Elizabeth sent 6,000 troops to the Netherlands to aid the Dutch against Spain. Remember, Philip came into Spain now? Or Philip from Spain came into the Netherlands now? Remember what happened in the Netherlands? He had all those 6,000 plus killed and said that he wanted all of the Dutch killed, 3 million of them. So who comes to the aid of the Netherlands but Queen Elizabeth in England? So she sent 6,000 troops into the Netherlands because she knew that the next step, Netherlands were right across the channel there, close to England. She knew the next step would be he would come and attack England. So like she knew England would be the next on the Spanish king's list of conquests. So Philip would use the Netherlands as his base then to attack England. So war with Spain was inevitable. And so she went and she protected the Dutch. The Dutch united with her against Philip. Here's Queen, this isn't Philip, this is the Queen Elizabeth. And these are her looking for and knowing that she'd have to go on to war. Spain attacks England. Spain had great strength on the seas because Elizabeth picked Sir John Hawkins, 1532 to 1595, to build England's navy. He was a great shipbuilder, and he designed and made the ships faster and able to withstand the weather. Plus, the guns that he put on the ship were long, heavy guns. And so he was great. Elizabeth always picked the best of the men to lead into the military there, the military leaders. He also picked the best captains, such as Sir Francis Drake in 1540 to 1596. Drake was known as he plundered many Spanish ships and went into the Spanish colonies and claimed their territories for England. He was already around, Drake was around the world. In fact, he was the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe. He went around the whole globe fighting Spanish ships. He was very able, a very able captain. And Spain viewed England a challenge as a world leader because of the English Navy. So King Philip of Spain knew that Sir Francis Drake and Sir John Hawkins were excellent, and so they thought, oh, we need to go and attack England now before England becomes so powerful. So the most important event happened here. Okay, we're talking about the Netherlands first. William the Silent in the Netherlands was assassinated in 1584, remember? And he prayed for the Dutch people. Well, England feared for their queen now, because having William the Silent being assassinated, they figured that there would be many attempts to assassinate good Queen Bess. And they thought Mary, Queen of Scots, maybe Queen of England. So they thought someone was going to come in. They were going to try to assassinate Elizabeth so they could make Mary, Queen of Scots, queen. And they knew, and this had happened. They already had some assassination attempts to the Queen Elizabeth's life. And Mary, Queen of Scots, had been in prison for 16 years now. I've said it, 16 years in prison. But Queen Bess did take care of her. But several plots had been uncovered to break her out as queen. Remember, she was used as this pawn. In 1586, a new conspiracy supported by King Philip said, okay, let's do this. We're going to try to get in there and break her out and make her king. Then after this conspiracy, Mary, Queen of Scots, was tried and convicted for treason by England. With great reluctance, Queen Elizabeth signed her death warrant. In 1587, her cousin, Queen Elizabeth's cousin, was beheaded. Elizabeth found no joy in this. She sat alone in her room weeping and weeping that her cousin had to be killed. She was basically known that she was being used as a pawn for her own assassination. A terrible story there too, huh? The Spanish Armada. Philip of Spain was determined to rule on behalf of the Roman Catholics. So England remained a major obstacle to him. All his plans had failed. He thought, can I get a hold of Mary, Queen of Scots, and use her? Maybe I can marry good Queen Bess. None of that worked. So in May 1588, Philip prepared a fleet of 130 ships with 2,500 guns and over 30,000 soldiers and sailors. Plus, he also brought along 180 priests to make them all Roman Catholic. This was the invincible Spanish Armada, and it was the greatest in the world, the greatest the world had seen. And now it was going to set sail to conquer England. The attack of the Spanish Armada was 1588. The plan was to sail to the Netherlands and then pick up 30,000 more troops, which they didn't, but they were going to go there and get more troops. If Spain had won there would be no Reformation, and Europe would be Roman Catholic. So basically, if this Spain and all of its top country of the whole world, richest country in the world, most powerful country in the world, if they had won this war, we would all be a Spanish, basically controlled by Spain. We'd all have Spanish culture and have the Roman Catholic religion as our religion, practically, because this was a major, major upset. Spain would have been the mistress of the world. The history of the world and the freedom hinged on the outcome of this one battle. Elizabeth prepares her country. So England's fleet was small but better designed. Her men were fewer but abler seamen, but England was united, and united with the Dutch. Elizabeth assured her people about being led by a woman. She said, I don't know if my people think that I can really lead England into battle against Spain, especially Spain being the most powerful nation of the world. But she said, I know I am feeble-bodied as a woman, but I have a heart and stomach of a king. Spain not dare to invade the borders of my realm. I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general, judge, and rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field. She said, I will head the war if I have to. She's a brave queen. The Armada was defeated, oh my goodness, in 1588 and ended the golden age of Spain. The Armada missed a golden opportunity to trap the English in Plymouth Harbor when the winds made it difficult for the English at the time, but the Spanish commander had no experience at sea, so he continued up to the Netherlands where he was going to pick up some more troops, but those troops were never picked up. The English got the wind on their side. Basically, the wind started blowing their way and left the harbor to attack the Spanish fleet. After 19 days of fighting, the English defeated the Armada completely. The remaining ships that left escaped by sailing northward up around the British Isles, and a terrible, terrible tempest, a terrible storm came up. And many of the fleeing ships were dashed to pieces on the rocky shores of Ireland and Scotland. Only half the ships and a handful of men returned to Spain. Philip said, I sent my ships to fight against men and not against the winds and waves of God. I find that Philip recognized that God had helped England. Spain's power declined and England was victorious, and this began the Elizabethan era. Queen Elizabeth, the good Queen Bess. Spain's morale was shattered. Its glory was gone. It was declining in every matter now that determines for greatness. England now was grateful for God for this victory. England had not even lost a single ship, and less than 100 men were lost, while defeating the most powerful country in the world and defeating the Roman Church. They had hardly lost anyone. England secured complete independence from the Roman Catholic control, and England's victory was the final turning point in the great duel between Protestants and Roman Catholics. It assured England, Scotland freedom. So now England would be free, Scotland would be free, as well as Holland would be free. Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway would all be free to the Protestant cause. They'd all be free of this era of Philip II wanting to take over the world. Here's a picture. This is of England, the ships of England. The Elizabethan age, England basked in the sunlight and glory under good Queen Bess. Greatness radiated from the throne, lighting the whole culture. From politics to poetry, real drama, or the theater, the Elizabethan age shines in history. England now would have its own Renaissance.